Isn't it fun to plan a vacation? Well, except for the money stress. Even if you save up for what you think it's going to cost, it's so hard to really estimate accurately. It's not like your rent or mortgage payment that's a certain amount each month with no surprises. So easy to fall into the trap of just saying, well, we'll spend what we want and I'll figure it out when we get home. Well, the same thing happens with our time. If we don't accurately estimate how long something's going to take, we just start working and think, oh, I'll find a way to fit it all in. But what happens? We end up overworking, we get tired, we get stressed, we don't meet our deadlines. Why does this happen? Well, there are a few things on your calendar that are similar to fixed expenses like rent, mortgage, your hydro bill. They have a certain time attached to them and it's very easy to estimate. But many other things on your calendar are what we would call a flexible expense, a flexible time expense. So in this video, we're going to look at 5 types of daily calendar items. And we're going to see the best way to time budget for each of them. The first one is meetings. Now, generally a meeting is going to be planned with a specific time to start and a specific time to end. So that's the amount of time you are planning to be available. Now, if the meeting starts late or it doesn't end on time, I think it's probably okay to just leave at the time that it was supposed to end, because that's the time you were told to prepare for, as long as it's not your fault that it started late and didn't end on time. But if you do that, this is going to help create some reasonable expectations for the next time. For example, if this is a recurring meeting with a team and they always start late and you say, I'm sorry, I have to leave at the time we said it was going to be over, then maybe next time they'll start on time. We can hope. But with a meeting, you do need to leave a time buffer before and after. So let's say maybe 15 minutes if it's an online meeting. That's going to give you some time to gather your notes, to sign on, and then at the end to jot down any action items. Now, if it's an in-person meeting, you're probably going to need a longer buffer, especially if you have to travel to the meeting or it's in an unfamiliar place and you have to find the room or something like that. However, a meeting is really one of the easier calendar items to time budget for because of the starting time and ending time. And if you're the one in charge of running the meeting, then you can be conscious of the time, and ahead of time, if you're doing the agenda, you can allot a certain amount of time for each item on the agenda. And if it seems like the discussion is going to go down a rabbit trail or take much longer than you expected, you might have to defer that to another meeting and just move on to the next item on the agenda. So there are some ways to keep it within the boundaries of the time it was planned for. The second calendar item that we're going to talk about is phone calls. Now, if somebody else arranges the call, you should ask them how long you need to keep open for this phone call. But if you arrange it, then it's up to you to tell the other person how long they should plan for. That way, you're both not going to be in for a surprise if they think it's going to be 15 minutes and you think it's an hour. That's the kind of situation you want to avoid. So just be clear up front about expectations. And similar to a meeting, if a phone call starts late or it doesn't end on time, it's probably okay to just end it at the time you had originally agreed on, because that's what you time budgeted for. Again, as long as it's not your fault. And similar to a meeting, for a phone call, you should have a short buffer before and after. You're going to need to gather your materials and jot down notes and action items at the end. But 15 minutes is probably a large enough buffer for a phone call. You might need even less than that. Another thing to remember with phone calls, it's best not to try to multitask during the call. I know it's tempting, but if you try to work on something else while you're talking, you're not going to be able to focus and you're not really going to get it accomplished in the time you plan. And then, of course, you want to take some time at the beginning and end of a call to show some personal interest in the other person and not to make it just so business oriented that you don't seem like a human. But you need to kind of keep that to a minimum and just try to get down to business and stay on topic. If it was just a friendly chat to say hello and see how things are going rather than business, you're probably going to make that call outside of your regular working hours. So you wouldn't even be making a time slot for it on your calendar. So we see that phone calls and meetings are kind of handled in a similar way because they generally have that starting and ending time. And you do really have the option of signing off when it's over because that's the time you were told to prepare. So I don't think there's really any obligation to stay on any later. The third calendar item we're going to talk about are appointments that are different than meetings. Now, this kind of thing can really vary depending on what type of appointment it is. So if it's an appointment in a very structured context, it's more likely to start and end on time. So I'm thinking things like an appointment with a lawyer or an accountant or university, a structured environment where they have to keep things on schedule and you can pretty much count on the fact that it's going to start and end on time. So you could treat it like a regular meeting if it's that structured. However, in other contexts, especially medical, there may be a backlog ahead of you. And so you might have to be prepared to wait. It might not start on time. In fact, I think I would say it probably won't. So I used to have this problem when I went to my doctor. It just seemed like I'd have an appointment for a certain time and I'd always wait an hour, sometimes two, and it was really frustrating. So I thought, you know what? Next time I'm going to ask for the very first appointment of the day and then I won't have to wait. So that's what I did. I asked for the 9 o'clock appointment. That was the earliest one I could get. Well, you know what? I got there and the doctor was not there. She was still making rounds at the hospital. So I still had to wait. So after that, anytime I went to the doctor, I just brought a book along to read. And you can do that if you want to just take some downtime. But another thing you could do to keep from feeling frustrated is to bring along some work that you can do away from your office. So something that will make you feel productive. You'll get something crossed off your list, get it out of the way. There's various things you can do with your phone or tablet or even pen and paper. Maybe some planning, some brainstorming, working on a project. So just be prepared to wait in those types of contexts, and that way it will keep you from getting too frustrated if it's outside of your control. The fourth type of calendar item I want to talk about are routine tasks. Now these are things like operational tasks that you do on a regular basis, weekly, monthly, quarterly, maybe even daily. Maybe things like reports, accounting, newsletters, anything that happens on a regular basis. Now, if you've done the task before, it should be fairly easy to estimate how long it's going to take. However, if it's the first time you've done it, it will take longer. I've personally found that a task that takes an hour the first time might only take 40 minutes the second time and 30 or 20 the third time, especially if I create a checklist to follow so that I don't have to think it through every time. I can just kind of work on autopilot for a routine task that I've created a checklist for. So for this type of thing, you probably don't even need a time buffer before and after. Just put the routine task into a time slot on your calendar. It can also be really efficient to batch these types of tasks. So say you have several, you could put them all into a certain time slot. And also try to save them for the time of day when maybe you don't feel as creative. And that way you can use your peak energy time of day for work that needs deep thought and concentration. The last type of calendar item I want to talk about are projects. So we're going to use this category for anything that doesn't qualify as a meeting, phone call, appointment, or routine task. These are things that are going to move you forward toward your goals. So they're probably longer term, but they still require some daily blocks of time to work on them. So you want to schedule these for when your brain energy is highest. So even though this is the last category we're talking about, it probably should be first on your calendar if it's possible to schedule other things around it. So we're talking about scheduling your day, but for a project, you're going to have to look at the big picture beyond your day. so that you know how much time to block off today. So you'll need to estimate the total hours for the project, add a large margin, and divide by the number of weeks or days you have to work on it. And then you're going to put it in a time slot for today, and you're going to protect that time slot. So even though it might not feel urgent because the project deadline is down the road somewhere, you know if you don't make steady progress, you're going to get stressed about it later and you'll probably end up overworking. So don't let other things steal time from your important projects. Put them on the calendar first. So we've looked at 5 types of calendar items and how to time budget for them. First of all, meetings, then phone calls, appointments, routine tasks, and projects. And each of them require a little bit of a different treatment as you're putting them onto your calendar to know how much time to leave before and after as a buffer. So I have a question for you. Do you find it easy to estimate how long a task or project will take? Feel free to comment below. Do you find it easy to estimate how long a task or project will take? Be sure to get your free task triage worksheet by clicking the link below in the comments, and stay tuned to this channel for more videos in this series, because we'll be looking at other topics in Time Budgeting 101 to help you manage the time in your day.